This week in the world, TommyInnit is beefing with Logan Paul over his prime energy drinks as well as the strip of Gaza. Takeaways in England are infested with rat droppings and you may not even know it. And a YouTuber family channel is finally being sued for unsafe work conditions. Starting our news week off in Wales, where an extremely unsettling crime has taken place. Nobody has trimmed the sheep for use over winter. But other than that, a burglar was going around and instead of stealing was rather helping. Damien, and there's no chance I'm saying that last name, the 36-year-old was breaking into people's homes in Monmouthshire and cleaning their homes for them. This psychopath was mopping the floors of his victims, doing their laundry, and even in some cases cooking their meals. In one case, he left a note that read, "Don't worry, be happy, eat up and scratch." I would rather take the unshaven sheep, if I'm being honest. Understandably so, this left victims terrified, with a particular focus on one even being quoted as saying, "I was too scared to stay in my own home and stayed with a friend. When I returned home, I was accompanied by my daughter, as I was too scared to go alone. My two daughters came back the next day to check on me and provide reassurance." Say what you will, dude, but the idea of being a single woman and having this happen to you is terrifying. And furthermore, it makes my 6'7" ass very angry. I just hate it when women are disrespected. As it stands, our boy Damien has been arrested and has faced his sentencing in Cardiff courts, where he will spend the next 22 months behind lock and key. In more serious news, the world of fat bears has been rocked by yet another scandal. The annual competition held in Alaska in early October bi-yearly, in which onlookers and the public vote on who is the fattest bear as they prepare for hibernation season, has had a murder. A little bit closer, I'm trying to perfect my Matt Berry. As bear 496, a large male, attacked 402, an equally large female. Naturalists are kind of stumped and unclear as to the why this happened, but their best guess is 492 had his predatory instincts kicked in by something that 402 did. Simply put, by one of the naturalists, Naomi Boyk, this is very difficult to watch and comprehend. We can feel these things, but we can't anthropomorphize what's going on and assume that a bear's behavior is like our behavior. It's very different. These are wild animals. As I'm sure your ears perked up on the start of this story, I said yet another. And if you were nodding along to that, good girl. That's because 2 years ago, the competition was rocked by voter fraud, when a bear named Holly was fraudulently elected as the fattest bear of the year, as someone was spamming for her votes from 2 different IP addresses. Thankfully, as some dead dude once said, "Stop stuffing me," and the voter fraud was quickly discovered and easily corrected, with the right bear 747 being anointed. Now, are you worried about being a piece of shit? Don't worry, you probably are, but you're not as bad as live streamer Jack Doherty, the fame whore who crashed his $300,000 McLaren along a busy highway as he was texting while driving. This crash caused serious injury to a friend who was in the passenger seat, who he then shoved a camera into that injured friend's hand and forced him to begin live streaming his car being totaled. It's crazy because before this happened, this guy was despised. And I mean, people really did not like him for no particular reason, aside from him being like a general prank nuisance. He just plainly had an atrocious vibe. You can feel, I don't know, I'm not a spiritual guy, but you can feel his energy. His aura was like dookie brown. And also, if you Google him, the first person to show up related to his search is Neon, which that alone is a death sentence on vibes. For Jack's efforts, he has now been permanently banned off Kick, which is a Herculean task in of itself, cutting off his biggest revenue stream. Jack, of course, in order to save face, has denied the fact that he was texting behind the wheel, but as I'm sure you can tell, he's obsessed with being on camera, so there were multiple angles to prove that not to be the case. It's hard to feel bad for the guy, as it's just the consequences of his own actions biting him in the ass. For the friend's part, who he shoved like a camera in his hand immediately after getting into a crash, you need to sue that fucking leech. He is going to get you killed. If his first concern is content over your life, he will prioritize anything over you. I can guarantee it. On the topic of unhygienic rats, the UK is facing a bit of a food safety crisis. As uncovered by BBC reporting, many takeaways, small businesses, butchers, and even corner shops are blatantly lying about their food hygiene rating. For those unaware, the food hygiene rating refers to these little stickers as issued by the FSA. But as of right now, there is no mandate for these stickers to be displayed by law, which is extremely troubling because you're unaware of the actual food hygiene rating of the restaurant you're about to enter. For example, you have no idea whether or not it's marked 5 on food hygiene scales, which is excellent, or a 1, which means urgent improvement is required, with those restaurants facing major fines and or prison time if the risk is great enough. As it turns out, some of these businesses have not been complying with those standards and have falsely been leaving previous rating stickers up when their actual rating has dropped much lower. For the FSA's part, they have responded by saying that this is a blatantly misleading investigation and is far too limited of a scope to represent their actual actual work. They also argue, as it is not the law for ratings to be displayed, they have a tough time actually enforcing their findings. For example, if I owned a kebab shop, I could easily lie to you as the customer and say we have an excellent rating when in fact we don't. With the only way to actually fact check what the owner claims right now is to go online and search within the FSA database. Furthermore, the FSA has stated that they have been trying for years to get legislation passed that would make it compulsory for shops and stores to display their rating with full accuracy, but as of yet have not managed. In the wise words of Palmer,
what?
It is insanity that this has not already been put in place. It's just a simple visual cue. I can't imagine that anybody would be pushing against this. Seeing as we have 3 football stories on the chopping block, I think it'd be best if I just rapid fire them one after the other. Starting off with Man City, who have claimed victory in their first legal battle against the Premier League. Kind of, as it wasn't over their FFP charges, but rather their APT charges that were also brought against them in a separate case. Just bring fucking Palmer back.
What?
Important distinction. FFP refers to financial fair play. It is a system designed to protect the sporting nature of the league, as in City can't just spend on whomever they like whenever they like. They have to follow a strict set of guidelines on how they acquire their assets. And as it stands in a separate court case, they are standing accused of violating 115 of those FFP rules from all the way back to 2007 to now. APT, on the other hand, refers to the Associated Party Transaction Rules. These rules are set in place to avoid ballooning sponsorship deals. Simply put, if I own a club and I also owned a company that sponsors that club, I need to make sure that my sponsorship of my club that I own is fair market value. In other words, I am paying the actual value of what it's worth as opposed to what I determine what it's worth. As the issue could be that I could inflate my sponsorship money to get around those pesky FFP rules, and in turn give my club a major advantage in the transfer market. Now here's where Dino shines in the sticky. Technically, Man City did win this trial, but so did the Premier League. The only reason why APT rules were put in place was due to Newcastle being taken over by yet another Saudi public fund in 2021. The Prem was fearful that with multiple Saudi investment firms taking hold of clubs, that those multiple clubs also having sponsorships owned by those people, it could just inflate as much as they like. Which on a personal note, and I have no evidence of, I am almost 110% positive Man City was already doing before these rules came into place in 2021. Regardless, these rules were put in place as a knee-jerk reaction to multiple investment funds coming in, and were in turn not really fleshed out. Without getting further into it, Man City won on 2 technicalities, but the Prem won on the fact that APT were not unlawful nor uncompetitive as Man City's lawyers attempted to argue. In other words, this was a circle jerk between you and your pal, meaning everyone won bar your grandmother who walked in and saw it. With the Prem on the mind, Jurgen Klopp has found new employment, following his unexpected exodus from Liverpool earlier this year. Many question where the German Scouser would end up next, with the answer finally coming in the most unexpected way possible, as he has taken up the job of head of football within the Red Bull company, meaning he will be in charge overall, not on the ground level, of Leipzig, Salzburg, and the New York Red Bulls. Which I gotta be honest, I am rarely surprised, but this is a real prison sandwich, both unexpected and unpleasant. As it stands, the Red Bull company owning a single club is controversial, but then to add insult to injury by appointing a modern German legend as its head of operations is just so. As much as I'd love to spend the next 10 minutes explaining in depth why that is, it'd be quicker if I just tell you to look up the 50+1 rule and understand that Germans really f***ing hate Red Bull. Speaking of hateful Germans, which is never a good sign, they have a very scary history of that, we go over to middle of the table Bundesliga side Wolfsburg, that are getting hella press following their striker Kevin Behrens' statements. In the long and short of it, when asked to sign the rainbow jersey, Kev, the madman, said, and I quote, "I am not signing that gay shit." Sorry. Before being quickly summoned to the sporting director's office in order to explain his comments. Something that didn't go over well, as Kev now is facing suspension, as well as the club releasing a statement in which they explain that Kev's viewpoints don't align with their own. Look, I'm gonna be unpopular. I think the dude was just having a bad day. It was a slip of the tongue. Who hasn't dropped something a little bit non-PC, but normally not in front of their actual boss? I normally say it underneath my breath, followed by like, "You're not my dad, dude. I don't care how many times you take me dirt biting. My real dad, Derek, said he would take me for a tattoo at 14. I'm gonna get the Monster Energy logo." Next up, we have Young Philly, or Young Feely, or even Young Diddy in the news. A YouTuber and singer, which, what the f*** is going on? I promise you, you YouTubers, nobody wants to hear you sing. He has been arrested following rape allegations put against him in Perth. As it stands, Young Philly is being accused by a 20-year-old of 4 counts of penetration without consent, causing grievous bodily harm, and 1 count of impeding someone's ability to breathe. The evidence was sufficient enough off to arrest Mr. Barnettos in Brisbane before he was extradited to his court hearing. He has since been released on bail, although the details of whether or not he can leave Australia are yet unclear. For the internet's part, this is big news, especially within the UK, as young Diddy has been on the platform for nigh on 8 years now, and has broken into the mainstream with shows like The Great British Bake Off, amongst other BBC projects. We also don't know if the BBC will be willing to work with him in the future, guilty or not, as they have been known to work with unsavory characters in the past. And that's normally where I'd end the story, but I just want to say something before we move on. I will say this until the end of my days. If you are talking about sexual assault or individuals affected by sexual assault and or rape, and you use euphemisms in order to not use those words like so many TikTokers and YouTubers do, like saying grape instead of the word rape, you are a genuine piece of shit, and I mean that. You are more concerned over profit and being pushed in an algorithm than properly expressing the gravity of a situation, and you make me sick. Speaking of sick moves, former President D. Trump just keeps winning my respect, I gotta be honest about it, as the baller who has now survived 2 attempted assassinations returned to the location of the first and dropped yet another hard-ass line.
Lee, thank you very much, really, and thank you, a very big thank you to Pennsylvania. We love Pennsylvania, and as I was saying,
it was a near-perfect move until he was joined by that whale, Elon Musk, who immediately brought down the whole vibe. It just feels like everything this guy touched makes you roll your eyes. And also, can I say this? Am I insane? Hang on, let me wet my lips for this. This post is South African. Why is he so into American politics? It would be like me being really into English politics. It's weird. Even if you live there. Elon, bro, I'm begging you, please. I had to flee our country. It has gotten so bad. My friends and family are literally too poor to feed themselves, bro. You have the money, fix it. In much happier news, God has finally answered my prayers. For years, I have been begging our Lord in the sky to slap some karmic justice on at least one of these hundreds of thousands of YouTube channels that feature children out there. As to me, it's just flat out child abuse. And finally, we are starting to see the ball roll on it, with a $22 million lawsuit going against Tiffany Smith, the grand furor of Piper Rockelle, and her YouTube empire. The channel, which focused on Piper's life, a young girl originally from Georgia, has amassed a following of over 12 million sickos. Piper was being sued by 11 people who used to be part of her pipe bomb squad. That wasn't what they were called, it just kind of amuses me. Apparently, these 11 used to appear in some of Piper's content. They alleged that Tiffany, the mother, had apparently orchestrated an unsafe environment for minors, and complained that they had suffered emotional and physical abuse, even going as far to claim that they were victims of molestation. It was alleged by the young girls in question that Tiffany would attempt to stage romantic crushes on one another in order to make the videos appear more interesting, and also demand that the girls in the video, who I might remind you were about 11 to 12, appear more sexy. Chief amongst their complaints, i.e. above everything else, was a lack of compensation for their appearance in spite of them never asking for it. As it stands, the two parties have settled for 1.85 million, so near enough 22 million, with Tiffany admitting absolutely no criminal fault. The young girls, or rather should I say their parents and guardians, have stated that it was never about money, but rather to hold Tiffany accountable and quote, the industry. Get to what a load of horse. To start off with, this industry you speak of isn't even real. You allowed your children into an unsafe environment that is a machine by its very nature of exploitation. When the exploitation didn't go your way, you sued. You didn't give a wet grizzly fart about how your kids felt, otherwise they would never have been in that situation to begin with. It's so oddly convenient that it was never about the money when you don't get the amount that you asked for, which also just goes to show that their case was at best extremely weak if they were only able to settle for that low amount. I hate Tiffany, may all of her sweets taste like salt and all of her savory taste like sugar, but goddamn I hate the parents just as much. On the topic of child influence, which sounds crazy to say out loud, oh my god, we have a sparring match between the two of the biggest figures in that regard, TommyInnit and Logan Paul, who seem to be at loggerheads over a segment on Paul's podcast Impulsive, in which during a conversation about the war in Gaza, Logan took a break to promote his sports drink Prime. Tommy, the extremely popular Minecraft YouTuber, took issue with it, seeing it as, a touch insensitive. I wonder why. I'm so sorry to hear that your entire family died in the tornado in Florida, but I'd just like to take a moment to promote my product. In response, Logan did the mature thing and leaked private messages between the two, and for some reason seemingly suggested that Tommy's criticism of Logan was because Logan didn't want to hang out with him. Alright, before continuing on a tirade and harassing the Minecraft tuber. Is this a real story? Not really. I just wanted an excuse to show off this tweet. If in the same week I had a daughter and I lost my beef to TommyInnit, I'd kill myself, which, whew, He's done you there, lad. Jesus. And with that, that is this week's Wolves news done. A big thank you as always for watching. I know I didn't mention the hurricane in Florida, but I just kind of saw it as that's not really, you know, irregular for Florida. So I didn't see much sense in covering it. I'll see you next week, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.